Hey, what's going on guys? Cliff here with a new After Effects tutorial on how to create user interface elements procedurally using expressions. So let's just jump right in and create our first composition. I'll add a shape layer. Give it a rectangle. Give it a fill. We'll set the fill to black. I'm going to add a null by hitting Control-Alt-Shift-Y. And another one. I'm going to name this one Properties. And I'm going to name this one Controls. I'm going to turn off the visibility on those so that I'm not seeing the anchor points and the shapes in there. Next, I'm going to add some slider controls. No, not some slitters, some sliders. And we'll call this one width. Call this one height. Going to drop into the rectangle properties. Alt-click on the stopwatch. Grab this guy, just lock that up so it doesn't go anywhere for a moment. Jump back into there, do square bracket, pick whip the width, do a comma, pick whip the height, and then close square brackets. You'll see that our square disappears, and that's of course because we don't have any width or height here. So I'm going to go for 10 and 80. That'd be a good place to start. Hit P to bring up the position. I'm going to right click, separate dimensions. I'm going to stick that at about 40. 20? Yeah, 20 for now. Rename this to S_01. I'm going to duplicate this layer and then hit P to bring up the position. Under the controls, going to add, well, first of all, unlock that guy. Slider. 4 sliders. I'll rename this one to random test or just ran test. Name this one min, max, and then step. We'll set the step to 20 for the moment. We'll set min to 3 and max to 10, ran test to 60. And I'll explain what those are all in just a moment. We'll go back to properties, and I'm just going to get rid of that. Expression controls, grab a color control. Delete that quickly. Contents, and I want to control my fill by the color control and the properties. So I'm just going to pick whip that guy, change it to red, change it back to black. So now no matter how many layers I create, they'll all be controlled by the one property color picker here. Alright, now we duplicate this guy, hit P, and we are going to hit Alt on the X control there. The first thing I want to do is create a variable called initX for our initial X position, equals. Go here, hit P, back into there, pick whip that guy, create dot value. I'm going to drag this up so we get a bit more space. We're only going to need to see the middle of here anyways, so it's not a big deal. And I need this screen real estate. So let's drag this right down. Go to controls and lock that off. Let's create some variables for each of those. We'll go rand test equals rand test, comma, or semicolon, min equals min, semicolon, max equals max, no, not like that, equals max, and step equals step. Okay, next we want to do new x, and new x is going to be the x position once we're done. We're going to want new x to equal the initial x plus step. So step is going to be the number, the space that goes in between each one of these. So I'm going to be creating multiple copies of this layer, and each time it's going to pop over a bit more down the line. I'm going to create a test that creates a random test. Speaking of which, I need to grab a slider control, pop it directly onto the layer this time. We'll call this random. We will create another variable called lrand for layer rand. And I'm going to grab a slider there, or pick up the slider there. Okay, and then one more time. So let's go here, unlock that, grab properties. We're going to create, again, another variable called w for width. Don't name it width because that is a name that is reserved in After Effects for the width of a layer, so it can mess things up if you use the variable width. So I'm just using w. Jump back here, we will go plus width, semicolon. Now we'll create our test for randomness. We will say if bracket lrand, the layer random, is greater than rand test. So rand test set at 60, so the layer random, we haven't actually set that yet, so we'll call this, alt-click on that, random, we'll give it a number, a random number between 1 and 100. So click away from there, 83. So at the moment, this is going to provide true because lrand, layer random, is 83, random test is 60. So if lrand is greater than rand test, then we're going to do some stuff. And we want new x to equal initial x plus step times, I haven't actually created that variable yet, so we need to create another variable. We'll call it rand, which will be generating a random number, and then plus width. width, yes. So rand, our random number, is going to equal math.round random min max bracket semicolon. So that is going to create a round number with no decimals of a random number between our minimum and our maximum. So at the moment, it'll be a number between 3 and 10. So the only difference between new x here and new x here is obviously that we're multiplying by the random number. So if this test is not true, we're going to get this new x, where it just steps by, essentially step is going to be what differs. So initial x, so it'll be here plus the width of this item plus step. So each one's going to pop a further amount out. If this becomes true, it'll go out initial x and then step times a random number between 3 and 10, plus the width, obviously. So in order to see what that's going to do, let's pop down here and put new x in. And that's worked well. So obviously because it tested true, it popped over automatically. Now what happens if we bring random test up above 83? So we'll call this 84. It's no longer true and it's popped right off the screen because I did exactly what I said we shouldn't do, and I've called it width. And now it's popping over just step 20. I'm going to take that down to 10. There we go. 10. But let's call this 60. One more thing we need to do before we start duplicating these layers is I want to change this initial x layer value from this static value of s_01. And we want it to change each time we duplicate the layer, we want it to reference the layer just below it. So I'm going to go this.index plus 1. So the this.index is referencing this index number right here. So 3. And so this index plus 1 is going to be 4. So it'll be talking about this layer here. But when I duplicate this, we've got 3. It's talking about this one, but this one's talking about 4, which is referencing 5. So each time I duplicate this layer, it's going to, first of all, recreate the random. Each one of these is going to have a different random seed value. And depending on whether it's above 60 or not, it will either go one step over or a step times a random number. But I'm going to take this up to 50 layers for now so that I can mess around with it a bit and show you what we've created. So let's go back to our controls. Our properties first. Let's say I say, okay, that's looking pretty good, but I think it's a little bit thick, so I want to take that down to 5. All of a sudden we got these nice skinnier ones, maybe a bit high though, so let's take them back to 60. All of them change, but I kind of want them to be maybe like a dark bluish color. Yeah, or say something a little more noticeable. Orange, or maybe just black because that's hideous, but you get the point. You can change all the colors all at once. But let's go to the controls. Let's say I want maybe a little less randomness. I want them to sort of stack together a little bit more than that. Let's take that down to 30. Oh, sorry, I added more randomness. I want to maybe bring that up to 80. Probably need a few more layers there. All right, just make sure they go off the edge of the screen so that it works properly. So go back to controls, 80. I think that's looking pretty good. I'm liking the space between them with the jumping 3 and 10. I think that's actually a good amount, but let's say I just want to bring it down a bit. 8. The steps. Let's go to 8 maybe. 9. Yeah, I think that's looking pretty good. You can always increase this more. A little bit of a warning. I've noticed that After Effects, once you start to procedurally drive these layers, after about 160 layers, it starts to cop out, and After Effects will just start saying that there's errors in your expressions, even though there aren't any errors, and it starts to break essentially, and it no longer works. So there's definitely limitations to this process. You can't fill up a screen with, say, 1,000 layers and hope that it'll still work. It just won't anymore after about, I've noticed it copping out at about 160. So just want to add a few layers to get to the end. Maybe just get rid of that last one. Now, the neat thing about this as well is I just hit page down and it's changing each time. Just going to bump that up to say 12. So you see page down. Every time I page down, it's changing. So let's say that you want to use this for a UI element, but you don't want it to jitter around. This can be sort of interesting if you want sort of a digital effect like this. But let's say you want it to be static. Well, there's a couple ways you can do that. Let's call this linear UI element 1. And we will bring it into here. And let's say that you decide that you like this particular one. You can either right click on here, go time, freeze frame, and just stop it there. It's not going to update at all. The other way to do it would be to duplicate this again, hop into it, say you like that frame. You could actually jump in here, and this is a little bit more complicated. You'd want to grab all of your layers, P, select all of the X positions, which would be, when you start getting into this many layers, can be a bit of a pain in the butt. But there are instances where you may want to do this. So you'd select all of the X positions, then you'd go to Animation, Keyframe Assistant, convert expressions to keyframes. I'm going to warn you, it's going to take a while for it to do that. I've had a couple of instances where I've been worried it was going to crash on me, but it hasn't. Then once it's in keyframes, you can either choose that layer or navigate to a particular layer that you want, and then just press backspace and it'll delete all the keyframes but leave you with the one element that you want. You can even delete the layers that happen to go off the edge of the screen. And you can use this as a design element in some of your animations, or you can, let's say we go into here and drag this down. You can also make it circular by going to polar coordinates, dragging it onto there, set rect to polar, and call it 100. And if we go to here, get rid of that. You can even have it animate that way, or again, freeze frame it as a static element. So now you've added a little bit of randomness into this. Don't feel that you need to stick with rectangles either. This will work perfectly well with circles, or if you feel like getting a little bit fancy, you could always use stars or polygons. Yeah, it'll work with whichever. I just drew a mask. It'll work with whichever shape that you want. Another way to use this guy would be to, well, let's create another one. Let's pick one that we like. Maybe that one there. We'll freeze frame that guy. We'll add a 3D camera. We'll give it a focal length of about 15. We will add a CC cylinder to it. We will grab our camera, rotate up, and you can use it vertically like that. So I hope this tutorial has been helpful and you get a chance to use these elements. If anybody uses this in a design, I would love to see them. Just hit me up with a link in the comments. I'm going to be making a lot of these tutorials, so if you think you want to see more, subscribe to my channel, and yeah, there'll be a lot more coming up. Thanks for watching, guys.